Stay with us here on World Insight. Still to come on the program. A big loss for Taiwan's ruling party DPP in recent elections. What does it mean for cross-strait relations? We'll get some answers right after this break. Back, you're watching World Insight. I'm Tian Wei. The program coming to you Monday to Friday on CGTN. China's Taiwan held local elections over the weekend. The opposition Kuomintang defeated the island's ruling Democratic Progressive Party, or DPP, in key battleground cities. The DPP chairwoman, Tsai Ing-wen, resigned after losing the polls. Before we get down to the discussion, take a look at this.
The Kuomintang wins. Among the 22 county and city chief posts, the Kuomintang party won 15 seats, the Democratic Progressive Party landed 6, and the last seat went to an independent candidate. The ruling party DPP suffered a major loss, including losing 2 key mayoral races. One was in Taichung, Taiwan's second most populous city, and Kaohsiung, a DPP stronghold for the past 2 decades. The elections also chose city councilors and village leaders. The mainland State Council Taiwan Affairs Office said the results demonstrate the strong will of the Taiwan people to share the benefits of peaceful development across the Taiwan Strait. A spokesperson for the office said the Chinese mainland will continue to uphold the 1992 consensus on the One China principle, adding that it also welcomes city-to-city exchanges and other cooperation. He added that any attempt at Taiwan independence were doomed to fail. The DPP's chairwoman, Tsai Ing-wen, who has had tense relations with the Chinese mainland since her election in 2016, announced her resignation after the elections, taking full responsibility for her party's losses. Analysts say voters are disappointed over the DPP's failure to fulfill its campaign promises, like boosting the economy and improving the pension system. Taiwan is set to hold its leader's election next year. The Kuomintang has sent delegations to China since Tsai took office, where they have been warmly received, and that contact is now likely to increase. Cross-strait communication and cooperation are also expected to improve as a result of the elections.
So what do the results of the Taiwan local elections mean for cross-strait relations? With us in Beijing, we have Zhong Hotao, a researcher on the Taiwan studies at the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences. And in Taipei, we have Joanna Lei, former legislator, who is also the chief executive officer of the Changhua 21st Century think tank. I want to welcome both of you for this discussion. Joanna, you are in red. Obviously, that is a color of celebration in Chinese culture.
Absolutely, because this is a very major landslide victory for the Pan-Blue camp, but also it is a very clear indication to object all major DPP policy directions. So hopefully with this midterm results, KMT will have a chance to show its ability to rule in different jurisdictions, and DPP will make a U-turn in those wrong policy directions.
Well, Joanna, before I go to Mr. Zhong, let me ask you once again about why do you think that the DPP is losing in such a big scale that Tsai Ing-wen had to resign immediately?
In the first 30 months of Tsai Ing-wen's rule, she had done very aggressive measures using their power in the legislative yuan to pass different laws to implement their campaign promises. And now it is extremely clear that those campaign promises are clearly rejected by people, including no nuclear power plant by 2025, Taiwan independence, labor reform, pension reform, as the so-called transformational justice are all being examined in this midterm election. So I think with the 10 referendums showing very clear rejection to the major DPP policies, the result is not just a landslide or a swing from one party to another party, but an extremely clear indication of the true people of the true voice of the people to say to DPP that their directions are not being supported and not being mandated by the electorates.
Well, Ms. Lei, it sounds like you're also indicating what's going to happen 2 years from now for another bigger election on the island of Taiwan. But for now, let me go to Mr. Zhong here on the mainland. As a researcher of the latest developments of Taiwan, Mr. Zhong, the TPP failed to fulfill its promises, and it brought out suggestions and policy directions that the people in Taiwan obviously did not like. But what do you think was the thing that really killing the DPP this time?
I think at least two issues that strike DPP, the ruling party in Taiwan. The first one is its bad performance in internal affairs, especially on economic growth. In this year, I mean in 2018, the GDP growth in Taiwan is only about 2.6%, which is much lower than the global economic growth, which is about 3%. And it is also the lowest one in the four Asia tigers. I mean, Taiwan's GDP growth is much lower than Hong Kong, than Singapore, than South Korea. So the people are most dissatisfied about Tsai Ing-wen's authorities' economic performance. Another point is about Tsai Ing-wen's authorities' stance on cross-strait policy. The Taiwan people just wish the cross-strait peaceful development, wish the peace and stability of Taiwan Strait. But Tsai Ing-wen failed to fulfill her promise. She just said, try to maintain the status quo, but actually she failed. So people are actually not satisfied with her cross-strait policy. According to the public opinion poll in Taiwan, about 56% of Taiwan people feel dissatisfied about Tsai Ing-wen's performance on cross-strait relations.
On these 2 points, one is the relations between Taiwan and the mainland, the other is about the Taiwan economy. I want to come back to you, Ms. Lei, about that. Cross-strait relations, for example, has been always a key issue for people in Taiwan. This time there were referendum even about whether to change the name of Taiwan from Chinese Taipei to so-called Taiwan. The former, of course, has always been used by Taiwan when attending international events, for example, Olympic Games. But now, obviously, that referendum did not pass at all. So, Ms. Lei, one after another evidence, so what does that mean? You know, the mentality of the people, generally speaking, in Taiwan. After all, this is a direct election.
Well, actually, the cross-strait relation played in three different parts. One is what you mentioned, the referendum number 13, and it wasn't approved. It didn't pass the referendum threshold. The second one was certainly the landslide victory of Han Kuo-yu in Kaohsiung. He used extremely simple language to talk about how Kaohsiung, in order to regain its economic luster, it has to be able to move freely across Taiwan Straits. Of course, he didn't use those languages directly. And the third one is, during the last leg of the campaign, Tsai Ing-wen actually went down, including Tsai Ing-wen, Lai Ching-te, and Chen Ju, all went down to different jurisdictions, continue to ask people to support DPP in order to protect Taiwan. So they did play the China card, they played the Taiwan card in the last leg of the campaign. So in all those attempts, Taichung, Tsai Ing-wen went directly, Taichung, they lost. Kaohsiung, Chen Ju and Lai Ching-te went directly to appeal to people to protect Taiwan, they lost. So cross-strait relations is now being put in a different framework. People wanted to know, in addition to calling those ideological terms, what would it mean to the livelihood of the people and to the opportunities, to the hopes and dreams of the everyday people? And that is extremely clear in this election.
Right. After all, Kaohsiung, for example, has been a stronghold for the DPP for 20 years. And this time they lost it. Obviously, there are some messages over there. Mr. Zhong, to you, though, if the KMT, the Kuomintang, comes back to power in some of the local entities, for example, cities and the counties, what would that mean when it comes to this cross-strait relations? Earlier, it is believed that the Kuomintang is having a much warmer relation with the mainland. It's much supporting the economic and trade ties between Taiwan and the mainland. And the mainland cut the deal, rather cut the tie with Taiwan after 2016, the DPP came to power. So now it's the different picture. Mr. Zhong, what would that mean?
I think that means the city-to-city talks between the two sides will become a highlight of cross-strait relations. In future, we will witness two different scenarios. One is the cross-strait relations, I mean the official, the Beijing to Taipei, and another is local relations. As for Tsai Ing-wen authority refused to accept 1992 consensus, the official dialogue will continue to be stand still, but the local relation will be warmed up. I think the city-to-city talk will become a highlight in cross-strait relationship. At the same time, the people-to-people contact, the economic cooperation, the young people exchange will also become a highlight in cross-strait relations.
Ms. Lei, earlier this year, we see that the mainland has been putting out from the central government quite a number of favorable conditions and also treatment toward businesses and economic ties with Taiwan. What does that mean? Has that been reflected, the policies in a way, in the votes? Meanwhile, Ms. Lei, how can we expect, with you knowing the KMT very well for decades, the picture to evolve from now when it comes to relations between the mainland and Taiwan?
Well, certainly Han Kuo-yu, the underdog, the wild card, and now the trump card, has given people an agenda-setting power to reframe the cross-strait relations. At one point, DPP was trying to intimidate people for taking all those goodwill offers by mainland China, and Han Kuo-yu has told his city that he will lead a contingency or a delegation to take advantage of those favorable conditions. So in a sense that this election has given a lot of right to set different agendas to promote different kind of relationship across Taiwan Straits. And for that reason, KMT will have to also rethink. Towards the middle part or to a later part of the campaign, you can see Ma Ying-jeou being extremely bold in proposing an entirely different 3 no positions relating to Taiwan and mainland China relations. And I think the ability to re-engage or to reset the agenda for cross-strait relations will be a major thing for KMT's reform going forward. And Han Kuo-yu will definitely be a very major force to be grappled with.
Talking about that, Ms. Lei, may I follow up, because there's a bigger election in 2 years. So whether those rethinking, soul-searching, and also policy making will be done on time to give KMT even further win in the bigger election 2 years from now, is it still a question mark, Ms. Lei?
Well, it's still a question mark for not only what kind of KMT, what kind of DPP will evolve in the next 14 months. It's still unknown. But if you were Tsai Ing-wen going into the 2020 general election, only 14 months or so from now, look at her cards. She lost about 17 to 18% votes from her own landslide win. In other words, DPP lost not only those jurisdictions, but it lost 17% of the votes, is roughly 2 million votes from 2016 to 2018. That's number one. Number two, DPP lost major population centers. Most of the West Coast, Taichung, Kaohsiung, all those major population centers and New Taipei cities are now held under KMT. So DPP lost its advantage in those places. And third, all those great campaign slogans that DPP promised people, like I mentioned earlier, no nuclear at 2025, Taiwan independence, labor reform, pension reform, transformational justices, and all those are no longer campaign promises. It's being said, it's being done, and it's now rejected in the referendum this time. So from Tsai Ing-wen's point of view, she's going to go into the 2020 in a very bad position.
I see. The none-in-one election, as we have been talking about, is seen as a bellwether for the next generation election. Before Saturday's polls, the DPP controlled 13 out of Taiwan's 22 cities and counties. Now it's left with only 6. More importantly, the DPP lost in both Kaohsiung and Taichung, the second and the third largest cities of Taiwan. So that is very clear a picture there. But having said that, though, what about the economy? We only have 2 to 3 minutes left. I want to invite views from both of you. Mr. Zhong, now U.S.-China trade war apparently is going on. Many are talking about the global supply chains. Taiwan business has been very much working with the mainland businesses in providing the American market with goods. But now, what does that mean?
Indeed, some Taiwanese businessmen are very worried, are concerned about the China and the U.S. Trade friction. Some businessmen even think that to relocate their factory and enterprises from Chinese mainland to United States or even to Mexico and some other countries. But according to my study and my field work, most of them just want to stay in Chinese mainland because if they leave Chinese mainland, they will lose our market.
I see. Ms. Lei, what about that? What is likely to be the future relation between the businesses from Taiwan and that on the mainland vis-a-vis the global market and global supply chain? Your thought?
Well, I certainly think that technology center will be hit very badly, especially with the new list of 14 different items currently under review by the United States. It's forcing a lot of the technology players to choose one versus another, but everybody knows that dual core, the two-engine society will be the best for all the people around the world. So the U.S. trade war with mainland China will hit Taiwan quite badly, especially in the trade and technology sector. And lots of people are scrambling and trying to figure out how to deal with the new uncertainties.
Well, whether that will have also an effect on the future political scenes and political debates in Taiwan, we'll still have to wait and see. For now, I want to thank both of you for helping us understand the latest situation and the future prospect. Zhong Zhentao, Zhong Hotao, and Joanna Lei, thank you so much for being with us. Really appreciate it.